In the small town of Barron, Wisconsin, surrounded by endless woods and quiet highways, nothing much ever happened, until one October night in 2018. A single 911 call came from a home on Highway 8. The call lasted just 45 seconds. No one spoke, only the sound of struggle, and then silence. When police arrived minutes later, they found two bodies, Jayme and Denise Closs, shot dead, and their 13-year-old daughter, Jayme, was gone. What followed was a nationwide manhunt that left an entire community terrified, confused, and desperate for answers. This is the story of how one girl survived 88 days in captivity and how she, and she alone, brought her kidnapper to justice. Jayme Closs was born on July 13, 2005, in Barron, a quiet rural town of barely 3,000 people. She was a shy, cheerful middle school student living with her parents, Jayme and Denise, in a modest house off Highway 8. They were known in the community as hard-working, loving parents. Both worked at the Jennie-O Turkey Store, one of the town's largest employers. Nothing about their lives seemed unusual. No enemies, no family drama, no warning signs. But somewhere, someone had been watching. It was October 15, 2018, a cold Monday night. At 12:53 a.m., a frantic call came into the Barron County Sheriff's Office from Denise Closs's cell phone. The dispatcher heard muffled noise, a commotion. Then the call abruptly ended. No one answered when dispatch tried to call back. Within 4 minutes, police were on the scene. The front door was forced open. Inside, Jayme Closs lay by the entryway, shot through the door. Denise was found in the bathroom, also shot, and Jayme was gone. There was no sign of struggle, no footprints, no fingerprints that clearly identified a suspect. Even stranger, Jayme's cell phone, school backpack, and all her belongings were still in the house. The question wasn't just who killed her parents, it was why take Jayme. Within hours, the small town of Barron transformed into the center of a nationwide search. FBI agents, local deputies, and volunteers combed through forests, rivers, and abandoned cabins. Hundreds of tips poured in. Every nearby vehicle was checked, every stranger questioned. A $25,000 reward was announced. Posters with Jayme's face spread across the country. The small, smiling 13-year-old with strawberry blonde hair and green eyes. But days turned into weeks, then months. There was no trace, no message, no ransom, no suspect. Many believed Jayme was gone forever. But far away, in a remote cabin in the dense woods of Gordon, Wisconsin, she was still alive. And one day, she would escape. His name was Jake Thomas Patterson, a 21-year-old from the small town of Gordon, about 70 miles north of Barron. He wasn't a family friend. He wasn't a neighbor. In fact, the Closs family didn't even know him. Jake had seen Jayme once, by chance, while driving behind her school bus on his way to work. That single moment, just seeing her step onto the bus, triggered a dark obsession. He later told investigators, "I knew that was the girl I was going to take." For weeks, Patterson planned the abduction. He shaved his head and face to avoid leaving hair evidence. He bought a shotgun, stole license plates, and waited for the right night, when her parents were home. On October 15, 2018, Jake arrived at the Closs home wearing all black, armed with a shotgun. He parked down the road, turned off his headlights, and approached the door. Jayme, hearing the noise, came to the door, and Jake fired through it. He then broke in, found Denise and Jayme hiding in the bathroom, and ordered Denise to tape Jayme's mouth shut. Moments later, he shot Denise, dragged Jayme out, and forced her into the trunk of his red Ford Taurus. He drove nearly 2 hours north, through back roads in silence, with a terrified 13-year-old trapped in his trunk. Jake brought Jayme to his remote family cabin in Gordon. It was deep in the woods, no close neighbors, no streetlights, no sound, but the trees and wind. He forced her to stay under his twin-sized bed, surrounded by weights and boxes so she couldn't escape. Sometimes he would turn the music up loud if visitors came, to hide any noise she made. For 88 days, she was hidden there, fed irregularly, denied contact with the outside world, constantly threatened that something bad would happen if she tried to run. Jayme later told police she never saw the daylight properly. Only darkness, fear, and silence. Patterson lived like nothing had happened. He'd go out to buy groceries, play games, even entertain friends. But before leaving the house, he'd make sure Jayme was trapped under the bed, sometimes for up to 12 hours straight. Yet, despite the terror, Jayme watched. She memorized the sound of doors, counted the steps between rooms, and waited. Every small detail could be the key to escape. By early January 2019, the town of Barron had nearly given up hope, but Jayme hadn't. On the 88th day of captivity, Patterson told her he was going out for a few hours. He didn't lock her in. That day, something inside her changed. Fear turned into determination. She whispered to herself, "If I don't go now, I'll never get out." Barefoot, trembling, and starving, Jayme ran out into the freezing Wisconsin woods, toward freedom. It was January 10th, 2019, a freezing afternoon in Gordon, Wisconsin. Snow covered the woods and the temperature had dropped below zero. Inside the small cabin, Jake Patterson told Jayme he'd be gone for a few hours. He left the TV on, maybe thinking the noise would keep her inside, but this time, he didn't barricade her under the bed. The moment his car disappeared down the snowy driveway, Jayme acted. She put on a pair of Patterson's shoes, far too big for her, and ran. Through the woods, barefoot inside heavy boots, no coat, no gloves. Her legs were shaking, her hands numb, but she kept running. After about 20 minutes, she spotted a woman walking her dog, Jean Nutter, a retired social worker. Jean noticed the girl immediately, small, pale, terrified. Jayme ran toward her and said, "I'm Jayme Closs. He killed my parents." Jean froze for a second, realizing who she was, the missing girl from Barron. She wrapped Jayme in her jacket and took her to a neighbor's house nearby. They locked the doors and called 911. The operator couldn't believe it at first. "You're saying you found Jayme Closs? Alive?" Within minutes, police cars and FBI agents surrounded the area. Jayme was safe. After 88 days in captivity, she had rescued herself. While police were confirming Jayme's identity, Jake Patterson was already on his way back to the cabin. He didn't know she had escaped. Officers spotted his red Ford Taurus, matching the description Jayme gave. They pulled him over on County Road N. He immediately raised his hands and said, "I know why you're here." He confessed everything on the spot. How he planned it, how he killed her parents, and how he kept Jayme hidden. There was no remorse, only a strange calmness in his voice. When news of Jayme's rescue broke, the entire country rejoiced. Headlines read, "The Girl Who Saved Herself." At the police station, Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald told reporters, "Jayme is the hero in this case, there's no question." In May 2019, Jake Patterson was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. He never appealed. He said, "I did it. No one else deserves the blame." Jayme Closs lost everything, her home, her parents, her childhood innocence, but she never lost her will to survive. Her escape wasn't just luck. It was courage, and her story stands as proof that even in the darkest moments, a spark of hope can light the way home. When Jayme was found, law enforcement across the country breathed a sigh of relief, but also disbelief. For 88 days, hundreds of officers, FBI agents, and volunteers had searched endlessly without a single confirmed lead. Now, with Jayme safe, everything had to be documented, every word, every detail. Investigators sat with her gently, letting her speak at her own pace. She described the man, the car, the cabin, even the road signs she memorized from the trunk. Her recall was extraordinary. Despite the trauma, she had observed everything. In her statements, Jayme described how Patterson used fear to control her. "He told me that if anyone came to the house, something bad would happen to me." Police teams visited the cabin she escaped from, a tiny wooden house deep in the forest. Inside, they found her hair, her fingerprints, and the space under the bed where she had been kept for months. It wasn't just a hiding spot. It was a cage. The sheriff later said, "That cabin will forever be a place of horror, but also of unbelievable strength." Within hours, Jayme's name trended nationwide. CNN, BBC, and every major U.S. outlet covered the story. Missing girl found alive after 88 days. It became one of the most discussed true crime stories in modern America. Reporters flooded Barron, trying to get quotes, interviews, and photos. But the community stood united. They protected Jayme's privacy, closing ranks around her family and friends. The local church bells rang the evening she returned home. Hundreds of people gathered, holding candles and posters that said, "Welcome home, Jayme." The small town that had once been filled with fear was now filled with hope. Jayme's case reignited conversations about child safety, trauma recovery, and how victims of abduction should be supported. Experts pointed out that she survived not just because she escaped, but because she stayed alert, observed details, and refused to give up. Psychologists called her case a miracle of endurance. It was studied in FBI behavioral units as an example of how abducted victims can resist psychological control through small acts of self-awareness. Organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children launched new awareness campaigns using Jayme's story, focusing on teaching children how to stay alert and recognize danger signals. Her bravery changed policies, inspired educational programs, and reminded people that even one survivor's story can reshape national attitudes toward safety and trauma care. Barron, Wisconsin, the quiet town that had been living in fear, began to heal. The Closs home was eventually torn down, but locals built a memorial at the site, covered in flowers and candles. Neighbors still visited on anniversaries of her return, leaving notes that read, "You are stronger than fear." Jayme herself chose a life of privacy. Her family requested media silence to allow her to rebuild her childhood away from cameras. But to those who followed her story, she remains a symbol, not of tragedy, but of courage, awareness, and hope. Because sometimes the most powerful rescue comes from the strength within. Even after justice was served, the scars of Barron, Wisconsin didn't fade overnight. Parents became more cautious, children slept closer to their families, and the quiet roads of the Midwest didn't feel as safe anymore. But among the fear, something else remained: respect. Respect for a young girl who survived the unimaginable, and who, through her silence, told a story louder than any scream. In a world where most kidnappings end in tragedy, Jayme's escape rewrote the ending. It proved that even in total darkness, instinct and courage can lead you home. Patterson pleaded guilty to kidnapping and murder. In May 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In court, Jayme didn't appear. She didn't need to. Her written statement was read aloud by her guardian. It said, "He thought he could own me, but he was wrong. I will live free. He will never have me again." Those words silenced the courtroom. Even the officers who had seen everything said it was the bravest testimony they'd ever heard. Patterson showed no emotion as he was led away. The door closed behind him, and with it, the long nightmare ended. Today, Jayme lives quietly, surrounded by family and people who protect her privacy. Her story has inspired documentaries, training programs for law enforcement, and countless discussions on survival psychology. Experts still reference her resilience, the way she memorized details, stayed calm, and waited for her chance. She became a living case study of human endurance, not because of what happened to her, but because of how she responded. Jayme didn't just survive her kidnapper, she defeated him, mentally, emotionally, and symbolically. And in doing so, she gave hope to others who are still waiting to be found. This isn't just a crime story. It's a story about the human will to live, about how fear can break bones, but not the spirit. Every tragedy leaves behind two paths: despair or strength. Jayme chose strength, and maybe that's what Unsolved South is really about, not just solving mysteries, but understanding what they reveal about us and about the hidden power that lies in ordinary people. Because even in the darkest moments, sometimes the light doesn't come from outside. It comes from within.